of Women Power Connect, welcome and good evening, and thank you so much for joining us today. WC has been working since its inception on women leaders, and along with the Friedrich Ebert Stiftung, we've held a number of webinars, particularly after COVID-19, to try and understand what has been the impact of the pandemic on women. And of course, violence against women has increased, whether it's domestic violence or violence in public places. But at the same time, we also held a webinar to understand what has been the impact on loss of jobs, loss of income, and reduction in household income. And can this be an opportunity for increasing women's entrepreneurship? If one sector has closed down, can another sector open up? And this was part of our Women Leaders initiative, because we normally think of women leaders as political leaders, but they can also be economic leaders, women who create jobs and opportunities for other women. So we held a webinar, and this was both in rural areas and urban areas. But I mean, this is not surprising, because the research already shows this, that having work and having money in itself does not necessarily lead to empowerment unless there's a corresponding change in gender norms. For example, in rural areas in Rajasthan, when it comes to block printing, the chapai work is always done by men. So even though the women do have work when it comes to block printing, that aspect of the work which involves making more money and having more control over resources is done by men. In urban areas, as women lost work, a few women started home-based work, selling of products, for example, selling of cakes, selling of homemade cakes. But even there is something that is known in economics as fear of success, because they don't, and this is well known because the earnings are ultimately controlled by the men, and it's not the woman who's doing the work who's going to end up deciding how to spend the money, unless there is a change in gender norms and gender stereotypes. So the idea for this webinar actually came with the budget in 2022, the very recent budget. For those of you who don't know, I'm sure all of you do, but it's divided in two parts. Part B. Part A deals with women-specific schemes, while Part B deals with schemes that are not necessarily women-specific, but 30% will go towards gender mainstreaming. Surprisingly, the budget allocation for violence against women, so that is part of the Sambal schemes, because they're all clubbed together, the one-stop center, Mahila, as the helpline, that has been reduced, but the bulk of the budget is in Part B, so for gender mainstreaming. This seems to be in line with the national vision of and encouraging women entrepreneurs, encouraging women to go out and work. And this is exactly what the PM said on the National Commission for Women on the anniversary in November, where he said we have to stop thinking of women as being in the private realm as doing domestic work, but as workers in the public realm. And so this is in line with schemes such as the skill building, the Vocal for Local, Atmanirbhar Bharat, the Pradhan Mantri Kaushal Vikil building, and looking really at women as workers, and the reason why we are having this webinar is to discuss, would that actually lead to women's empowerment by itself? Of course, it has the potential to, and I'm so glad that we have so many experienced speakers who have agreed to come. I would like to request Ms. Damayanti Sridharan from the FES to please say a few words before I introduce the speakers. Damayanti, you're on mute.
I'm sorry. Once again, a very warm welcome to everyone who is part of this webinar on women's economic empowerment as a means of combating violence against women, strategies, limitations, interventions, and a way forward. Some of you are aware of the work of FES, but for those who are not very familiar with it, I'd like to just say a few words about the organization which I represent, that is the Friedrich Ebert Stiftung. We work very closely with the values associated with the Social Democratic Party in Germany, that is solidarity, peace, and social justice. And from this mandate of social justice, we have taken the mandate for gender justice, and we have a very special focus on women's empowerment and gender in the India office work of the foundation. I must say that today's topic is very, very close to my heart, because when I started working with the FES, women's economic empowerment was one of the strong pillars of the work over here. And I must say that this was somewhere in the mid-90s. BRAC and also Pradhan were two of the organizations which were kind of the ones from which I took a lot of inspiration. Unfortunately, I was not able to visit BRAC at that point of time, but we did visit seeing the kind of work which was done, and more so having traveled to those groups with other self-help group members from other parts of the country. It was actually this was really the initial phases of my work in the development sector, and it was so heartening to see the kind of demonstration effect one had when one saw what was achieved in those groups, in the sense that where groups from Bihar who were very, very reluctant to go in for savings program, very, very naturally, because of the kind of things which had happened over there in terms of their having lost their savings to unscrupulous agents. Seeing how it was working in other parts of the country, the effect which it had, I mean, amount of training, any amount of theorizing could not bring that across. Similarly, other experiences from other parts of the country, also from Bangladesh, I think this has been one of the very, very strong points of the development sector, how willing groups have been to share and learn from each other. And I think it's in this spirit that I really, really look forward to the I'm sure the experiences from BRAC, from Pradhan, and also from Uttan will be very illuminating for all the speakers. And I look forward to these deliberations. And I think I will not like to say more. I would like to listen more. So, and thank you, Gayatri, for always bringing together the right kind of people and to bring in the impulses from a wide spectrum of offshoots from the topic which we discuss. And thank you for having put this panel together. And I look forward to the discussions.
Thank you so much. So our first speaker today is from BRAC, Mr. Shariful Islam. And as Bangladesh is increasingly being seen as the success story of South Asia, both in terms of poverty alleviation and women's empowerment, I'm very grateful that you've come. Mr. Shariful Islam is the program head of the migration program at BRAC. He works on sustainable reintegration of vulnerable returnees in cases of human trafficking. So I would request you to please share some good practices and to share with us what has been the experience of BRAC, particularly in the COVID-19 scenario.
Can you see my presentation?
Yes, we can. We can.
Okay. Thank you. So thank you for this excellent arrangement and women power. As I last time visited in Delhi just before COVID, so it was really a good memory for all of you. So thank you. As you know that BRAC is a huge organization, so I don't know that next 10 minutes how much I can. So probably all of you know that BRAC was established in 1972. I think you can see the slide or presentation. So the basic vision, if you see, the vision of BRAC is that we want a world where free from all forms of exploitation and discrimination. So wherever you say about exploitation and discrimination, definitely gender is one of the priority. So all of you probably know that the BRACs, we have almost everything, we have education program, gender program, health program, so lots of programs. So sometimes some people ask that, what you don't have? We say that we don't have a separate military and separate airport. So except the separate military and separate airport, we have almost everything. So it's all of you know that world's largest non-government organization. I'm not, though it's based on Bangladesh, but we have our operation 11 more countries. For last 5 times, BRAC is renowned as world largest non-government organization. So if you see that our chairperson, Sir Fazl Abid, he just say that if always BRAC want to be a relevant organization, we must strive to continuously find solution to the newer problem which comes in society. And he said that we must continue to fight the root causes of inequality, be it economic or gender-based discrimination. So he always focus on this, and we have always our for 5-year strategy. BRAC always run on a 5-year strategy, and on the same time we have a separate strategy for gender studies, we call it. So that is also very much aligned with all of our programs. So currently we are running on our strategy from 2021 to 2025. So we have our 4 basic things on that strategy, that equality, dignity, gender responsive, how BRAC can be. So now if you come that in last 50 years, what BRAC have done, so that you can understand that 110 million people reached through health and education service. So 3.1 million people, they have graduate of extreme poverty. So there's a huge number. So I will not focus more on the numbers. You can all have a look. So I just want to share you that how BRAC's programs are very much focused on women. So you can see last year's some of the programs achievement. So each programs. So now just discuss that about that how. So we have our education program, that how education program is focusing of our gender-based discrimination and violence. We always feel that the girls students should go to school. So last 50 years, BRAC schools was an opportunity that 12 million children, they graduate from BRAC schools, and most of them were girls' child. And if you see that, that was the BRAC's innovation, that one teacher, one room school, because in 1972, just after our liberation, so it was not possible for government to bring schools everywhere. So BRAC established one model that will establish one teacher and one room school in the community, and we had 68,000 schools. BRAC's one of the programs is very much popular in globally, that's poverty alleviation through ultra poor graduations. We call it UPG programs. And if you see this one programs that which is target to bring people out of poverty, is fully target for women. 100% of this program's target is for women, so that the poorer women can be the participant here. They can earn, they can be focused on their social protection, and how they can be in financial inclusion and social empowerment. So it's a programs or graduation approach that we try to give some effort to the women, and we have seen that how they become out of poverty. So this is a fully programs which is focused on women. Same our microfinance, all of you know that BRAC has running one of the biggest microfinance program. Over 8 million families are already been beneficiaries on this. Here also the focus is also the women, that how women can saving the money, how women can run the family. And now if I come to this our migration programs, because if I want to brief that there's a lots of programs. So migration program which I am leading, so we have 3 focus. One is that we want to see that the migration is safe and orderly, and how to combat human trafficking, and third one is reintegration. So if you see that a large numbers of women are now going abroad. So in last 20 years, more than 1 million people have went abroad. So how to make them safe and others? So we really working with them, because we always want that women can also go to abroad. It shouldn't be only for men, but we should make it safe. And now if you see that the for reintegration for the traffic survivors, all of you know that the trafficking is one of the major problems in cross-border area. A large numbers of girls, adolescents, girls are trafficked. So for them, so we have established a model that we call it 4P approach that is very much common on trafficking. All of you know that prevention, prosecution, partnerships, all of you know that. But what we try to see that what's the problem, how we can really solve it. And we have many success cases that how the traffic survivors, most of the cases were happened, somebody are trafficked, then somebody helped them to just repatriate, but we just start from them, not only repatriation, how she can earn again. So that's one of our model, and you can see many of the cases, thousands of cases, they established their life again. And we have also developed a tailored reintegration plan that where we focus on psychosocial counseling, economic reintegration, and social reintegration. And we've seen that if we can give a woman all the perspective, then the reintegration is sustainable. Either she is traffic victims or she is from returning migrants and others. So there's descriptions on the model that how we give them support in airport. Then for counseling is very much needed them because they sometimes really face some traumatic problem, and sometimes they are abused, they are frustrations. So that's why they are very much needed. And the social reintegration, we always believe that whenever the woman goes abroad or she sends the money, the husbands or the family members abused it. And when the woman returns, she doesn't get the money already, it has been used. And when she returns, families sometimes blame them if she is abused and may release the others. So that's why the social reintegration is very much needed. So we have also developing an approach here and how to make community peoples on the social reintegration process. We are working this and through mass awareness and others, and economic reintegration, that is very much important to give them training and also to make them entrepreneurs so that some women start kind of business and run this. So you can see this many happy faces that have started their business. And on COVID times, I want to focus on this because we have saw that the gender-based violence increased 24%. So that's another problem. And how to solve this problem? The school dropout is happened. Women have been tortured. So BRAC has taken a lot of approach that to solve these problems and others. And violence against women. So BRAC has started another campaign in whole the country wise that how we can stop this violence of against of women. It's urban to village. So all of our community members, police so much, all of them are working with this. Our legal aid services, they are working on this. So we want to really stop this violence against women. So we have started this initiatives again. And I will thank all of you because it is 10 minutes. I don't want to take much time so I can answer all of your questions. So I want to thank all of you by one quote from our Sarfaz Abid. So thank you all.
Thank you so much, Mr. Shariful Islam. What we'll do is we'll take questions at the end, and we have enough time for an open house discussion. Our next speaker is from Pradhan, Ms. Madhu Khetan. Ms. Madhu Khetan is a development professional. She's been working with Pradhan for the past 30 years, and she's very well known for her work on strengthening women's collectives. And I think for today's program, we would be very interested to hear about how can we use women's collectives to further anti-violence against women initiatives. She's also leading a partnership with NRLM around strengthening SHGs and cluster level federations. So Madhuji, over to you.
Thank you so much, Gayatri, and thank you for organizing. The topic of the webinar is again, very close to my heart as well, and has been something which is, constantly, I think, guided my own thoughts and actions for the last several years. So I'm sorry, but unlike Shariful's very nice presentation, I thought, I'll just do a free-flowing narrative. So basically, see, since Pradhan, we kind of said that working with women is going to be, something which is like a non-negotiable for us very early on in our, since the inception of the organization, after the initial, first 5-7 years. So this came from our understanding that even within a family which is vulnerable, women's position is kind of further, on the margins. So therefore, very early on, we said that we would be working with women as a group, as a category, and also, right from around 97 onwards, we also said that we would be, for working with women, we said that we would take the approach of organizing women into self-help groups. So that was, and this was a little different from the other organizing that, typically, for example, the Mahila Samakhya model talked of a different approach, but we took this approach. And if we see currently, our outreach is around close to 10 lakh women spread across 7 states and around 30 odd districts and around 100 odd blocks. Our own experience has been that, around, initially, of course, there was this, our own engagement into mobilizing women around savings and credit took up a lot of organizational energy. But over a period of time, I think many colleagues across different geographies started to, voice and recall various anecdotal experiences of, despite a general sense of empowerment of women when they come into groups and collectives, but also, still there being, incidents of violence, various other incidents of, gender-based discrimination, such as, instances of polygamy, instances of, son preference, and various, other normative, social normative changes, which, as groups were not being addressed, or women themselves were kind of not really recognizing that those were issues. And therefore, using the groups as a forum to actually trigger discussions. And when we kind of reflected on this, we thought, there was this realization that, we ourselves as also the women are kind of, brought up on notions of, what is acceptable, what is not acceptable. And therefore, it is not very surprising to really find that women are kind of, there is a normalization phenomena which is happening not just with the women, also with colleagues within Pradhan also. It's not to say that we are on a different pedestal. I think initially there was a response in by colleagues, and these were more of local responses by colleagues, a few colleagues who tried to respond in their own way to these kinds of issues that they saw. But fortunately, we, with support from a UN Women Fund for Gender Equality support, which we managed to secure in 2011, we kind of embarked on a small pilot to integrate a gender perspective in various dimensions of Pradhan's work. So in this pilot, we kind of looked at one was a kind of triggering conversations around gender consciousness within women's groups. And let me also say that, we also kind of became more conscious of the fact that, women's groups, especially the self-help group movement, has also been criticized for the fact that, women become like conduits of loans for the families and not really deciding for themselves. And also in some cases, just the fact that, I'm kind of bringing in loan, there is also an associated violence. So all these issues also kind of, were getting flagged. So we were also, let me also say that we were a little skeptical as to how much, because we were operating within this overarching framework of embedding these issues within the framework of self-help groups, which were mainly functioning around a very strong, savings and credit as the primary activity. But surprisingly, we did, I mean, over the course of this 4.5 years pilot, we saw a kind of, very surprising, also our own understanding about the kind of issues that women were experiencing, but not sharing, even with us. And even as facilitators, the kind of, groups that we were working with for very long years. So with this kind of, triggering of conversations, many stories started coming up. I will not go into the details, but, during this 4.5 years pilot, we kind of looked at various kinds of collective actions being taken by women. And let me also say that before collective action, it was also, at both levels, one saw also at the level of individually in her own household, reflections on, her own family and the kind of, importance and discrimination that, she as a person in the family was kind of making between her own son and daughter, those kinds of actions also. But also at a collective level, actions around various kinds of issues of early marriage, girls' education, the treatment of, single women, and various such issues. This was also followed by, our own realization that within, our the whole livelihood program, the kind of importance of reproductive work and the kind of women's own denial of the kind of critical role that she performs as an economic actor. And that is like completely, women themselves don't realize the importance of the work that she does and the role that it has on, the economic prosperity, vibrancy of the household. So a whole segment of work around with women around, actually, so through various participatory exercises that we all kind of use, the Taraju game and various such thing. The other thing was, that women in India, because of lack of access to land, are kind of not recognized as farmers, even though, the definition of farmers is this kind of provide, but various cultural norms kind of actually, the predominant imagery of a farmer within communities, within women themselves, is that of a male person. So a lot of work also around, strengthening women's identity of themselves as farmers. So that was one more stream of action. And then the third stream of action was around this realization that one is, economic prosperity is kind of driven by livelihoods, which is a private act, but also realizing that it is inextricably linked also to, functioning of public services. And you can't really isolate, this livelihoods as a private action from the functioning of public services and the access of women to public services. So I'm talking about various kinds of things: women's asset to Narega, women's asset to assets under various public schemes and entitlements. I'm also saying women's access to, things like, the kind of roads, infrastructure, etc., drinking water, which plays a role into how much, time is available with women to actually give to livelihood activities. So all these things also come into, become very important. So based on this, the 4.5-year pilot, Pradhan then in 2014, around 2014, then this led to a change in our own development approach and integrating two things. There were two shifts which happened. One is that we said that, we need to relook at our own conception of whether as professionals we are the primary change agents, or the women's collectives with whom we are working, those actually need to be defined as the primary change agents. And our role needs to be around facilitating these collectives to actually determine their own agenda and us working with the collective. So that was one change. And the other change was that, articulating gender equality as a predominant cornerstone of Pradhan's development approach. And this has taken the form of various different kinds of actions. I don't think there's time to, actually go through the various kinds of forms that this has manifested itself into our programming. We can probably talk about it in some other forum, but it has led to various widening of the, which was earlier predominantly an economic construct, to also, expanding it to a socio-economic political construct of empowerment driven by women's collectives, which has also led to, work around, say, nutrition security, land rights for women, and also recognizing that women are not a homogeneous category, and also therefore, leading to work with younger women, adolescent women, and specifically, understanding the barriers that they face and also the aspirations that they have, which may be different from, the slightly lot of older women that are generally there in self-help groups around, skill-based opportunities or employment activities. Yeah, and I'll just end also that that having said all this, I mean, it's not that, once women are more economically empowered, violence is going to reduce. So we have to see how, being economically empowered with a gender intentionality leads to, women recognizing that, there are choices available, and that, the culture of silence is broken and women are able to assert their agency, and silence should be, an option of the last resort. So, and having said that, I would also, like to re-emphasize and reiterate that actually, services for actually responding and supporting women who are facing violence are also, quite limited. So we need to also, look at also, not just placing the entire burden of bringing about change only on the women, but also, recognizing the importance of also creating an ecosystem of support for the women. I'd like to end here, recognizing also that I've probably exceeded my time. Thank you so much.
No, thank you. That was very interesting. And I'm glad you mentioned infrastructure, because one of the webinars that we had held also focused on safety in public places. And it's not enough just to have metros in place, and it has to be gender sensitive. And in COVID-19, one of the suggestions was that digital payments have to increase and not cash, because of increase in violence against women in public places. But we have enough time for open house discussion. So our next speakers are from Uttan in Gujarat. And I would like to invite Ms. Pallavi Sopte Rajpat and Ms. Jaya Rathore. Ms. Pallavi has been working with Uttan for the past 18 years. And at present, she co-leads the organization. She's been working on human rights with a focus on gender. And Uttan works on poverty alleviation in Gujarat. Maybe you could speak more about the work Uttan does. Jaya is a trainer with Uttan, and as a trainer, she has worked with women's collectives, and she's been responsible for forming women's collectives, particularly in the coastal area program. Please feel free to talk in Hindi. अगर आप हिंदी में बात करना चाहते हैं, that's perfectly fine, or English as you feel comfortable.
Thank you, Gayatri. We're really happy that we're able to share some of our experiences in today's discussion. So, like you said, we'll both speak in bilingually. And किसी को अगर कोई question होगा तो please raise and we can translate if required. So yes, like everybody said, this topic and this subject is really close to so many of our hearts. And while we are all, really looking at integrating gender and justice in all our work, we do look at certain specific thrust areas where we all are trying to contribute to. And in the same way, Uttan is really dedicated to initiating, gender sensitive processes within communities. And like many other friends here, we try to really work around the issues identified by communities themselves. And our work is located today in 6 districts of Gujarat. And we primarily work with the most vulnerable communities in the locations where we are based. And as you will see in all the areas where we work, over time, we have supported and incubated women's federations, which are mass-based women's federations, and are working on the ground on various issues they have identified over time. They've, the number of issues have increased over time, and the strategies which we have been using and supporting the federations for have also changed over time. And Uttan also strongly believes that it's a learning organization. And as we move forward, all our programmatic areas, we actually look at it we work on 5 thrust areas. So livelihood security, or we may say poverty alleviation, is just one of the areas where we work on. And the other issues we work on is specific programs on gender and women's rights, WASH, and peace and justice. And building community institutions, and specifically institutions of the marginalized communities, is really core and cuts across all the work which we do, because we really feel that for sustainability and for moving ahead in a just democratic way, that is the way we should move ahead. We were asked a few questions actually to share from our work, because we all are doing so much of work. But we'd like to focus today on how women's federations whom we support, what kind of efforts they are taking up or have been taking up to counter violence against women and girls, how they really were able to intervene during a crisis like COVID or the cyclone which wreaked our coastal areas, and then how Utthan in its livelihood programs or poverty alleviation programs really sees and looks at how women's empowerment related strategies can be weaved in. So we'll start by sharing that women's federations have evolved over time, like Madhuji shared, and like many others experiences are there that organizing women into small groups, whether for self-help or savings and credit, was a methodology which many of us used, as the SHG movement developed. And we really used it at Utthan as a medium to bring women together, like many others. And over time, for strength and for taking up issues at a larger level, these women's groups were federated and supported to really form women's federations from an agenda which emerged from community women themselves. कि हमको आगे जिला के स्तर पे कुछ बोलना है या राज्य स्तर पे बोलना है, तो आवाज मजबूत होगी तो ही हम कर पाएंगे. So taking this ahead, Utthan really supported building good practices and governance for supporting federations to come together. In terms of violence, several kind of efforts are being made today. The federations with the Utthan support is looking at building community awareness, sensitivity amongst its own membership. All the federations are running women's Nyay Samitis, justice committees, which provide direct support to survivors of violence. And the core, the way this emerged was basically that women, as we all know, found it difficult to really access the law providing agencies. So this space is something which is close to women physically, and they are able to connect with women from their own areas who are aware about the laws and who are, provide them feminist support in trying to really access justice for themselves. The other role women's federations play is dialoguing with law providing agencies for various issues which are emerging, especially out of survivor support or certain events and incidents in the locations, and collaborating also with them for really strengthening the kind of services which are available to women to support women who are facing violence, or to build awareness, because even there are a lot of institutions who have awareness on their agenda as well. So the idea is totally to really see how, through a demonstrative way, the federations can provide feminist survivor support and dialogue, and really impress upon agencies that how, through supporting this dialogue with evidence, they are able to really play the role they are expected to play, because neither the women's federations or Utthan is meant to replace these law providing agencies. And the other thing what federations do is basically to really constantly look at what kind of violations are happening at the area level, in the district or around, and really act as a pressure body on the law providing agencies, or even at the governance level with panchayats or other such bodies. So this in brief is the kind of actions which the women federations are taking up. And now I'll ask Jaya, my colleague, to please share the next sharing which we thought we'd share with you is कि खास कोविड में या साइक्लोन के दरमियान महिला संगठनों ने वायलेंस के मुद्दे को कैसे एड्रेस किया. So I'll invite Jaya, please, to continue. जया, आपको अनम्यूट करना पड़ेगा.
हेलो.
हाँ, ओके.
हाँ, तो जो अभी उत्थान के जो सपोर्टेड 5 संगठन है, महिला संगठन, तो अलग अलग जगह पे है, ट्राइबल में है और कोस्टल में है. लेकिन मैं खास करके कोस्टल में जो काम किया उसके बारे में बताना चाह रही हूँ कि क्राइसिस के समय में जो यहाँ पे कोस्टल के बारे में मैं बता रही हूँ कि अभी क्राइसिस के समय में जो कोविड-19 भी था और साइक्लोन भी आया था, तो उसमें संगठन ने अलग अलग तरह की भूमिका निभाई थी. और खास करके जो महिला और युवतियों को जो हिंसा को रोकने के लिए उन्होंने जो जिम्मेवारी दी थी, वो गांव के जो संगठन है उसमें जो लीडर है गांव के समुदाय के साथ, पंचायत को साथ में रख के उनके साथ बातचीत करने की शुरुआत की। और जब ये हो रहा था कोविड-19, आप सबको पता होगा कि गुजरात में पहली बार एक कोविड-19 का केस घोघा ब्लॉक में आया था। भावनगर डिस्ट्रिक्ट के घोघा ब्लॉक में ये केसेस आए थे। तो वो वहाँ हमारे यहाँ तो पूरा एकदम ब्लॉक कर दिया था, कोई किसी को मिल नहीं पा रहा था, कोई कहाँ से बात भी नहीं कर रहा था। तो ये थोड़ा कुछ हो रहा था और वो भी था उसमें कि ये पहला केसेस मोमिन लघुमती में आया था, तो वो भी थोड़ा डर का माहौल था, किसी से बात नहीं करना और सबको ये थोड़ा टेंशन था, तो मिलने-जुलने का कोई बात नहीं हो रहा था। लेकिन संगठन को गाँव में से फ़ोन आ रहे थे लीडर का, संगठन के प्रमुखों और उप प्रमुख को और उनकी कमेटी को, कभी गाँव में ऐसा चल रहा है तो कुछ करना चाहिए। और संगठन ने फिर बाद में उत्थान के साथ फ़ोन पर बात की कि भई महिलाओं थोड़ी डरी हुई है, गाँव में ये प्रश्न हुआ है कि भई लघुमती में केसेस आए तो बाहर नहीं निकलना और पानी भी नहीं मिल रहा है उनको और खाना-पीने में भी बहुत दिक्कत हो रही है। तो उनके बेसिक सवालों को उन्होंने समझने की शुरुआत कर दी संगठन ने। और उत्थान के साथ रहने उन्हें बेसिक सवालों क्या है, उसकी ज़रूरियात क्या है, उसके बारे में उसने महिलाओं के साथ जो गाँव में जो महिला थी लीडर महिला उनके साथ बातचीत करने की शुरुआत की। फिर गाँव में ऐसा लगा कि पहली जो बात थी हमारी वो पहली जो बात थी वो हमारी राशन नहीं मिलने की बात थी। जो राशन जो तो सरकार ने तय किया था कि जिसके पास राशन कार्ड हो या ना हो फिर भी उनको तभी राशन मिलना चाहिए। लेकिन यहाँ की जो सिचुएशन ऐसी थी कि सबको राशन मिल नहीं रहा। तो हमारे महुआ ब्लॉक की जो धनी बहन करके एक महिला थी उसने पीडीएस के साथ बातचीत की, ब्लॉक लेवल पर बात की, ब्लॉक लेवल पर उनको संतोष नहीं हुआ तो उन्होंने डिस्ट्रिक्ट में उनके डायरेक्ट पुरवठा मंत्री को बात की विभाग में और पीडीएस सिस्टम को बोलने की बात की और लिखित में दिया कि भी यहाँ पे इतने गाँव में हमको ये पीडीएस वाला जो सिस्टम है ये नहीं मिल रहा। तो वो मामलादार के साथ बात की और ऐसे ही 2-3 हमने यहाँ पे उदाहरण दिया है कि जैसे सूर्याबेन ने आदिवासी पट्टी में जो जिसके पास रेशन कार्ड नहीं थे क्योंकि वो तो पलायन हो गए थे, उनके पास रेशन कार्ड नहीं थे तो उनको ये नहीं मिल रहा था। तो उसके बारे में तो सब संगठन ने मिलके ये पीडीएस सिस्टम को किस तरह से सरकार अच्छी तरह से चला सके और उसमें लीडर का गाँव के लीडर को जो सपोर्ट चाहिए वो मिल सके इसके लिए उन्होंने टेलीफोनिक चर्चा की, पंचायत के सरपंच को रख के चर्चा की कि गाँव में अभी ये राशन की ज़रूरियत है तो उसको पूरा करो क्योंकि ये पहली ज़रूरियत है। जो लोकल जो हर रोज़ गाँव से जो सिटी में आ रहे थे अपने खुद के खाने-पीने का बंदोबस्त करने के लिए, वो जा नहीं पा रहे थे, आ नहीं पा रहे थे, तो उसको पहली ज़रूरत थी उनकी ये राशन की। तो उसके बारे में बोला और जिग्ना मैम ने जो बात बताई है वो फॉलो करने के लिए कि गाँव में जो लोकल अभी जो वंचित साइड में जो ऐसा हो रहा था कि जो लोग अपने गाँव से सिटी में जो कमाने के लिए आ रहे थे वो नहीं आ रहे थे इसीलिए घर में भी थोड़ी दिक्कतें चल रही थी खाने-पीने में। तो उसके बारे में अंदरूनी जो झगड़े हो रहे थे तो उनको पंचायत और पुलिस उनकी फैमिली के साथ काउंसलिंग करना, वो टेलीफ़ोन पर बात करनी कि अभी ये परिस्थिति है उसमें आप क्या कर सकते हैं। आपको राशन की ज़रूरियत है तो हम पंचायत के साथ बात कर सकते हैं। इस तरह का उनका जो हिंसा घरेलू हिंसा उसको सॉर्ट आउट करने की बात की थी रिलीफ में। इस तरह से वुमेन फेडरेशन ने उत्थान का भी सपोर्ट माँगा था कि भई हम क्या किस तरह से हम रिलीफ कर सकते हैं। तो ये रिलीफ के बारे में भी बताया था कि भई हम गाँव में ऐसा कर सकते हैं कि जिस लोगों को राशन नहीं मिल रहा है उसके बारे में हमको राशन की तुरंत ज़रूरत हम लोकल गवर्नमेंट के साथ रह के और फिर तब ऐसा भी हो रहा था कि स्कीम भी चल रही थी, जो पोर्टल भी खुल रहा था तो पोर्टल के बारे में उनको समझाना, उसको पोर्टल खुल रहा है तो उनका जो डॉक्यूमेंट है उसको भरवाना और एप्लीकेशन कराना, तो इसमें हमने 18,000 जैसी एप्लीकेशन हमने उनको कराई अलग-अलग स्कीम की। तो इसके बारे में हमने थोड़ा ये बताया था। फिर संस्था के जो अभी जो संस्था के साथ रह के हमने अलग-अलग जो बात की थी कि फिर अ, समझने के लिए जो कटोकटी के विस्तार में जो हमने अलग-अलग स्टडी की थी, अलग-अलग लोगों नेटवर्क के साथ रह के हमने अलग-अलग स्टडी की थी। तो उसमें ऐसा था कि हमने ऐसा स्टडी में देखा कि जो घर के साथ-साथ महिलाओं को घर के साथ साथ खेत का भी काम बढ़ गया था, घर का भी काम का बोझ बढ़ गया था, तो महिला को ज्यादा बर्डन हो रहा था, श्रम ज्यादा हो रहा था। तो उसके बारे में भी हमको पता चला। वो हमने गुजरात का जो आरसीआरसी नेटवर्क है उनके साथ रख के हमने एक स्टडी किया था। तो उसके बारे में भी हमने यहाँ पे बताने की कोशिश की है। फिर जो कोविड के दरमियान जो ग्रामीण समुदाय के जो हो रहा था, तो उसके बारे में हमने ये भी तय किया कि उनको जो बाहर जाने का था वो कम हो गया, तो उसका भी वेतन में थोड़ा दिक्कतें हो रही थी, उनको खाने पीने के भी थोड़े दिक्कतें हो रही थी। तो अलग अलग नेटवर्क के साथ रहने हमने स्टडी किया था। नेक्स्ट। फिर ये सब कुछ हो रहा था, तो फेडरेशन ने संस्था के साथ रह के जो पूरा बात की थी कि भाई हम ऐसा क्यों नहीं कर सकते कि हमारी जो महिला किसान है उन्होंने भी थोड़ा खेती का जो पैदाश हुई है वो मार्केट में दे नहीं सकते, तो हम ऐसा कर सकते हैं कि हम रिलीफ में जो भी कुछ देने वाले हैं हमारे महिला किसान के पास से खरीद के हम महिला को दे सकते हैं। तो एक ऐसा भी हमने एक मॉडल खड़ा किया था कि पीपल टू पीपल सॉलिडारिटी। तो वो जो स्मॉल और मार्जिनल किसान थे, उनके पास जो भी थोड़ा अपना कुछ बचा हुआ जो मार्केट में देने वाला जो अनाज था उसके बारे में हमने उनको बताया। और महिलाओं ने उन्होंने खुद लीडरों ने गांव के लीडरों ने ऐसा बोला कि हमारे गांव में इतने लोगों का मार्केटिंग का बाकी है, तो उस तरह से उन्होंने जिम्मेवारी ली कि हमारे गांव में कितनी महिलाओं का अनाज अभी तक मार्केट में नहीं पहुंचा, तो उसको बेचने के लिए हमको ट्राई करना है। तो ये हमने बनाया कि उनका जो गेहूं है, बाजरा है और थोड़ा कठोल, तो वो मिलेट्स, तो वो सब कुछ हमने एक फॉर्मेट बनाया और फेडरेशन के साथ शेयर किया। फेडरेशन ने नेटवर्क को दिया और इस तरह का हमने एक फूड किट बनाई थी कि इतनी फूड किट में गांव में से जाएगी, इतना हम बाहर से लेंगे। और इस तरह का हमने एक फूड किट तैयार की थी रिलीफ के दरमियान। और वो सारी जिम्मेवारी फेडरेशन ने ली थी। और रिलीफ के दरमियान जो मास्क और मास्क का जो पूरा जिम्मेवारी, मास्क खरीदना, मास्क को बनाना, ये सब कुछ फेडरेशन ने अपने 3-4 गांव है जो सिटी के नजदीक है उन्होंने जिम्मेवारी ली कि हम ये मास्क बना के हम एक किट में डालेंगे। तो वो भी पूरा किया था। और अब थोड़ा कोविड-19 वाला जो था वो थोड़ा आने। हाँ, हेलो।
नहीं, आप कंटिन्यू करिए।
तो वो थोड़ा वेव दूसरा आ गया था, तो उसमें हमको आने जाने में दिक्कत नहीं थी। और हमने गवर्नमेंट के साथ भी बात की थी कि हमको ये काम करना है, तो उन्होंने हमको इतना भी सपोर्ट किया था कि भाई आप जा सकते हो, क्योंकि हमारी सिटी से और गांव के बीच में एक ऑफिस है संगठन की। यहाँ से हम सारा कुछ फूड किट का काम कर रहे थे और जब जरूरत पड़े तो संस्था वाले उनके साथ 1 या 2 बंदे जा रहे थे। और तब हमको ये गवर्नमेंट ने इतना अच्छा सपोर्ट दिया था, आपको कोई भी रोकेगा नहीं, टोकेगा नहीं, लेकिन आपको ये ध्यान रखना पड़ेगा कि आप किसी को टच करें तो आपको ये दूरी रखनी पड़ेगी। इस तरह का आप भी सावधान रखिए। तो ये सब कुछ किया था। तब ऐसा मौसम भी चल रहा था कि खरीफ सीजन भी आने वाली थी। तो अभी हमने ऐसा बोला कि किचन गार्डन किट यहाँ पे ज्यादा चल रही है लोकल में। जो किचन गार्डन किट का भी हमने उनको अलग अलग 10 प्रकार की वेजिटेबल किट बना के उन्होंने हमको सपोर्ट किया था। के और खरीफ किट में हमने थोड़ा सीट दिया था उनको, 70% हाउस होल्ड को हमने एक सीट दिया। और उनको ये भी बोला कि आपने जो भी सीट संगठन ने दिया है उनमें आप 2 या 3 गुना करके हमको देना है, जिस तरह के हम दूसरी बार उनको दे सके। तो ये भी एक हमने उनको शर्त रखी थी कि हम जितना भी आपको, जैसे कि 20 किलो का उसको सीट देता है तो हमको 3 या 4 मिला के आपको देना पड़ेगा। तो वो संगठन ने भी जिम्मेवारी दी कि हम दे सकेंगे। और उन्होंने दिया भी, अच्छी अच्छी तरह के दिया हमको। तो इस बात, तो उसके बारे में भी उन्होंने जिम्मेवारी ली थी। नेक्स्ट। हेलो।
हाँ, एक मिनट।
और तब ऐसा चल रहा था कि वहाँ जो अ, अ, मिनट है।
हम लोग इसकी बात कर रहे थे ना जया, कि कैसे न्याय समिति के महिलाओं ने कैसे सपोर्ट किया महिलाओं को जिनके साथ हिंसा हो रही थी।
हाँ, तो वो तो मैंने उनको बताया ना कि अभी हमने उनके साथ टेलीफोन करके उनको पुलिस और जो उनको तत्काल जो जरूरत थी उनके साथ हमने फॉलो अप किया, और वो भी उनको जो जरूरत थी वो उसको अभी ये वाला है उसमें, ताकि जब पहला वेव था तब हम न्याय समिति की महिला जो हमारी कमेटी है, तीनों चारों पांचों जगह पर है फेडरेशन की में 3-3 महिला है, और वो रूबरूप जब जाती है तो केसेस ज्यादा बाहर निकल के आता है। लेकिन इन दोनों में जो ब्लू वाला है इसमें वो जा नहीं पा रही थी गांव में, तो वो थोड़ा केसेस कम आ रहे थे। लेकिन दूसरे वेव में जो वो खुद जा रही थी तो पता चला कि इस समय केस भी बढ़ गया है और केस भी बाहर निकल के आया था। वो घरेलू हिंसा के ज्यादा केस थे कि उनको बाहर नहीं निकलने पा रहा था, तो घर में अंदर अंदर ही झगड़ा ज्यादा हो रहे थे। तो इसके बारे में ये पूरा है कि भी हम फिर बाद में दूसरे वेव में तो हमने भी सरकार के साथ रह के, और उन्होंने भी हमको सपोर्ट दिया, तो हम फील्ड में भी जा रहे थे, संगठित की महिलाओं भी फील्ड में जा रही थी।
राइट।
हम्म। अ, अ,
इसमें मैं फिर कंटिन्यू करती हूँ
हाँ हाँ
कि महिला संगठनों ने ये सब जो काम किया कि क्राइसिस के सिचुएशन में इमरजेंसी रिलीफ जो थी वो तो इमिडिएटली उसमें उन्होंने एक प्रतिसाद दिया, क्योंकि वो सबसे इम्पोर्टेंट और इमिडिएट रिक्वायरमेंट थी। पर ये जो उनके मौके थे कि जब वो रिलीफ वर्क के लिए जा रहे थे गांव पे, जब पंचायत और लोकल आगेवानों के साथ मिलके वो काम कर रहे थे, इसको इन्होंने अपॉर्चुनिटी की तरह भी संगठन की सभ्यों ने यूज किया कि कैसे जो महिला लीडर्स हैं गांव में उनके साथ बातचीत हो, और एक लिंकेज का सिस्टम बनाया जाए कि अगर कोई प्रश्न आ रहा है तो फोन पे कैसे बात किया जाए, क्योंकि रिलीफ वर्क के जाने में भी तभी भी उस टाइम भी काफी रिस्ट्रिक्शंस थे और बहुत आसानी से सब गांव में नहीं जा पा रहे थे। तो जो पहले का भी, क्योंकि संगठन इतने समय से यहाँ काम कर रहा है, और साथ साथ में इवन बिकॉज उत्थान हैज बीन लोकेटेड doing various kinds of efforts in this area, the presence of sangatans, the strength of the rapport with local stakeholders, panchayats, youth, men and women, is what really helped things to move ahead easily. And not to say easily, but with quite a lot of confidence. Even the people from the communities really responded. साथ में हम बात करें तो community leaders and local government officials also, the kind of connect Sangathan and Uthan had created is what really helped to provide this response to the emergency needs and to cases of survivors trying to reach out to the law providing agencies or to the Nyay Samitis. So we'll now go into just a minute. Sorry. Yeah. So when we speak of definitely our contention is that there is no automatic reduction of violence if we focus on and work only on increasing household income. And this has arisen from our various experiences around livelihood, because Uthan has also been, along with our programs on WASH and gender and justice, we have looked at several livelihood security related initiatives, be it around watershed development or sustainable agriculture or other agri-allied efforts, and a whole quantum of work on access to basic rights and entitlements. What has really emerged is that strengthening voices of women, bringing them into the local institutions in a way that they are able to really provide active decisions, preparing them to do that, working with both men and women as to how this discussions happen at the group level, and very importantly linking women to the area level women's federations. So if we are working on watershed development, so there may be watershed committees, पर watershed committees में महिलाएं कहाँ हैं, महिलाओं की बात कहाँ है, महिला का निर्णय कहाँ है, that has been one of the focus areas of Uthan, and that has really helped in bringing the empowerment angle to the livelihood work, and the presence of women's federations who have been doing various kinds of efforts around supporting survivors of violence or supporting women to really access basic entitlement, social welfare or livelihood schemes, and also to access their land and property and other resource rights. That has provided a very deep linkage to be able to see that when women who are involved in livelihood intervention activities, it provides them the ecosystem then to really look at and engage on other issues as well. So along with all the livelihood efforts which we do, the idea is that how within that we can strengthen an inclusive approach to resources and build a culture of understanding and compassion amongst communities. And so all our livelihood work really has been trying to balance how we can look at sustainable interventions which will improve the livelihood per se, but also be very much based in equity and be drawn from people's needs. And what we've come to see is that both at the institutional and the program level, there is a really a need to address these the gender specific causes of livelihood insecurity, which differs from the various areas one may work in. So that is what has really guided a lot of our work. Uh, Making women's empowerment really integral to the goals of the livelihood programs or the even in project formulation is what has been very much instrumental, and that has meant to really ensure that we are incorporating strategies which will help or incorporate the time which will therefore be required over and above income increase related activities. So what will be the various things we will need to do additionally to really ensure empowerment, to ensure that women's voices really are able to come out and they are able to really think about what after the income has been increased. How is it that we are taking decisions? What is the change in power structures which they would like to think about? So this has meant, of course, efforts from us, our end, to really raise resources also to do the same. I won't say that we have been fully successful, but the concept which we are trying to really integrate into our livelihood programs is really that there will be need to do specific efforts. There will be need that if we are doing a training on technical sustainable agriculture package of practices, if we don't talk about women farmers identity, if we don't talk about different work burdens in agriculture, and what is it we can do to really bring about the change, or if the women farmers are not connected to men in the village or to the panchayat in the village, we feel that it is not enough, and it's not really going to then lead to a a inclusive kind of change. And Utthan's effort has therefore been to continuously sensitize all the team members who are working, whether on livelihood or any other work we do, whether it's on wash or justice. So it is not by just, it has been very clear that by just adding people who will be responsible for the gender component in the livelihood program is not enough. That is helpful, but definitely each and every person has to go through these conceptual understanding, so that then there is being able to convert it into other program level. So even for Utthan, this is still continues to be work in progress, and some of the strategies which we felt would be useful, we shared it here, that there's some specific efforts which we feel that over the income increase related technical strategies, what we really need to do and what we have been focusing on is to build socio-technical capital of women themselves. So we are working on sustainable agriculture. Utthan's approach is then to really build technical skills and technical leaders and women farmers as technical leaders, so that there is acceptance, it leads to identity change at the village level amongst women themselves and amongst others. Leadership building of technical leaders also really has been instrumental in the various changes which they have then led on right to right to Narega, or to really then raise issues of violence or safety of women at the village level, which they have then raised at the level of the Gram Sabha. So, including various such strategies with women in the programs has been quite useful. Definitely, we feel that, and we have experienced that working with men and with the local governance institutions is also extremely, important, and has helped women to really bring about that change after having gone through socio-technical leadership building, after having to really improved and reached out to other women farmers, for example. So overall, sharing stories, positive stories of women and men has really been very useful for ensuring that, we are able to bring about the change, or to bring about support structures when, for example, women are taking lead and there is possible and potentiality of backlash. It is these efforts at the community level which is then really supporting women to bring about that change, and to really garner support from everyone else. So there have been, various examples where these strategies have really helped, where women have been able to bring about a change in the distribution of unpaid household work, or deal with issues of violence, or raise issues, with the sarpanches, or at the Gram Sabha level, or with block level officials. So we'd like to really end here, and maybe we can take up more in the discussions. But I would like to end with a small, a very, very short video to show how, while livelihood security work has supported someone like Ratni Ben in the video, but access and support from the women's federations and Utthan and the networks Utthan is a part of, is what is really then ultimately being able to bring about that change which we are talking about. Gayatri, do we have time to play the video, or should we just...
How long is the video? Maybe we can do the open house and then have a video.
Sure, please.
All
yes.
right.
Okay. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you. Thank you so much. I think after listening to your presentation, it's quite clear that it's NGOs who are really pushing forward for deeper addressing the issues of violence against women, social issues, child marriage, and there's a question on that in the chat. While the entire focus of the country is on economic development, which is also understandable given the context that I think I would like to take a few questions, because people have been waiting very patiently, and there are questions in the chat already. I'll just read out the questions in the chat maybe, and whoever would like to answer from the resource persons can do that. Just 1 second. Okay. So one question is from Naveen Kumar. How can we eradicate that kind of, I think he is asking about eradication of child marriage and 1 second, social evils such as dowry deaths, female feticide. And I think this question, maybe if you would like to unmute yourself, you can, but I think this came during Madhu's presentation. So he had asked that in the context of Madhu's presentation. That is one question. And the second question from Padma is, can some of the speakers touch upon the issue of educating, sensitizing men and boys? And I think, Pallavi, you've already done that. And what they are doing in that regard. Thank you. And one more question from Shoma is, could you please elaborate upon the economic system of support which you emphasized in the end at your presentation? How do you build this at the community level? What are your strategies? And maybe Shoma, if you'd like to elaborate further, please unmute yourself.
Not economic, the ecosystem of support. Sorry, Gayatri.
Sorry. And was this question targeted for, this was for Pallavi's
Yes,
presentation?
particularly from Madhu, but others may also like to share their strategies.
Okay, so there are two
Thanks,
questions
Madhu.
for Madhu.
So I think regarding the first question by Naveen, I think in our case, and which is very similar to, I think, what Uthan also shared, this was kind of mainly led by the women's collectives and various kinds of collective action that they took, ranging from, it was from rallies around on various issues to build more consciousness, awareness, but also, more convergence and to bring about some change in the collective thinking of the community. That was one. And then, also accompanied by actions by few individuals within the community to actually break the norms and create, some other kinds of, so for example, the whole thing about, single women. So I particularly remember in Hazaribagh how many women kind of, took the lead in actually making those shifts by actually inviting single women to, for example, like in weddings, they kind of, kept in the background, etc. So in using those kinds of, a few women or groups taking the lead to actually show that, and set examples. So that was one. Mainly, I must say that it was like completely like a bottom-up collective action led by the women's groups, and also accompanied by engagement with the duty bearers. For example, for the work against violence, there was a lot of engagement with the particular, in the thanas, police stations, etc. Also supported by, also responding to Soma's question of the also setting up various kinds of mechanisms. So, for example, in Pradhan, one set of mechanisms has been within women's collectives. So, for example, the village organization setting up, also saying that that they would specifically, keep a separate space for women to talk about issues of violence, etc. And the forum itself then, functioning like a Nyay Samiti, and also keeping a specific, group of women taking up that responsibility for actually attending and supporting such cases. Then there were other mechanisms like, for example, in Madhya Pradesh, we had a set of women from the community being trained as paralegals with support from, organizations such as CSJ and MARG, and the whole sensitization on legal literacy, and so that the women who are kind of undergoing these kinds of issues are supported to actually access legal recourse in justice, as well as setting up of Nari Adalat Kendras, particularly in Kodarma area, where and also now in Bokaro, where there is a, alternate, conflict resolution mediation mechanisms are now being run very regularly by women as alternate conflict resolution mechanisms. Also, when it comes to access to entitlements, Soma, we found that this kind of a collaboration between community-based organizations such as the federations and Panchayati Raj institutions, because both are kind of, organizations which are present across the country. One, the Panchayati Raj institutions are kind of legally mandated to, particularly to facilitate issues of access to entitlements and functioning of public services. Although, devolution is still, quite varied. but still, there is a modicum of, formal space. But it's two institutions, there's a lot to, work upon in fostering a more collaborative frameworks in terms of functioning between the two. So what has worked also for us, and this is, not all across, but in few pockets where that kind of work has happened with panchayats and collectives, that, these help desks which are run by women from the collectives are kind of nested within panchayats. So these are functioning like GP level help desks, which, but these desks are run by women from SHG. So there is a natural connection, therefore, between these two institutions to come together and function more lesser like adversaries, which in some cases it tends to, become this tussle of power and influence. So that is also kind of showing some very early positive results in terms of facilitating access to entitlements. So I'll stop here.
Thanks so much. I'll just take Padma's question because the hand has been up for a long time. And
thank you so much. I really liked all the sessions. I think they were very, very insightful. And I thank you so much for all of you for sharing this information and also structuring all of it for us. I have a couple of questions, and I think both of you did answer some of the things about sensitizing men, especially Pallavi. So one of the things I noticed is both Pradhan and Uthan, and I'm sure Brack as well, you've been able to kind of take inputs from the field as they come and sort of pivot. And especially, I think during COVID, it had to happen quite quickly to be able to say, okay, this seems to be an issue now. So women farmers need to be helped. Can we actually create those food kits, etc.? So how does that, come back? I mean, are the women on the ground empowered to do these things on their own? And then how do you also get the information back so you can replicate it in other places? I'm curious about how that works. That's one. I have a second question as well, but I'd love to hear from you on this.
So yeah, I'll just share a little bit. What happened is that definitely a very strong handholding support is required. And specifically when we were all, even Uthan, thrown into a sudden remote working strategy where we're not used to really zooming all the time. So वो काफी उसमें challenges भी थे. But definitely women have been at least using the phone, to do various things. We developed quick learning and strategies also where people were using Google Forms. The Uttan field teams, of course, were very much in, support, such structures also with the women's federations. But a lot of it did happen on the phone because women's federations, the membership at the village level is continuously meets, on a regular basis. So there is this interaction and continuous link. And I think that is how it really worked. In a crisis situation, of course, we were, we tried our best to really ensure very efficient and, detailed kind of things. But we were very clear that we could not really do too much of detailing because we were really wanting to quickly really address the situation. So what we did was we quickly created indicators on what kind of women farmers we wanted to support first. And because we are already working with women farmers, and in fact already looking at sustainable agriculture related efforts, so leaders themselves did know, even the teams did know कि किस महिला ने खरीफ में क्या किया है, and because of the marginalization she may not have really been able to reach the market by that time because we were talking about just harvest time that time. So all the definitely the what Jaya mentioned is that we tried to really discuss how we can do a buyback system, not a buyback, sorry, return back system of the seed, which is also from Uttan's previous experience where we have, whenever we try and actually in all our programs, wherever there is, for example, a seed support, there is always a component where women or the farmer is returning back double the seed after the harvest, depending on, of course, the monsoon or how the weather, depending on the production really, if there has been challenge, and obviously we're not forcing and doing things, but these are all collected not by Uttan but by Women's Federation. So it comes to the Women's Federation space, and then they really see how in the next phase a lot of our In fact, because COVID was like ran over so long, it's still running. So first phase, mein whatever seed came back in the first Kharif was the seed was used again in the second phase to reach out to more women farmers. That seed which was not possible to be used was then disposed of as food grain, or then more was purchased. So definitely, I will say that we ourselves need to really improve and good practices for these things to happen. But I think in an emergency situation, what was done was quite remarkable, and also because these federations did have previous experience. So in all our area, in two areas, Utthan, with support of the Working Group for Women and Land Ownership, we are collectively, the federations are running, small seed banks. In one or two other locations and through our other programs, we have already, done this effort. So there was a prior experience did help. And also it was really the, the enthusiasm and the time which the women's federations really provided for this. And they did take full support, not only of women, of youth, of panchayats, whom they had been continuously interacting with. And also when, when we are working, what we have really adopted is while working with women farmers, for example, we are not working only with women farmers and, that's the interaction. We, Utthan facilitates the formation of, something like a village development committee, which has men and women, including the master farmers, for example, including representation from the panchayat, which has regular meetings to discuss what has been happening, how we can then really take this learning to the village, because ultimately the entire ecosystem is required to then, move ahead. So yeah.
Thank you. That's good. So
Oh,
if I may
sorry.
ask one more question. I think right at the beginning, Gayatri talked about the fact that there was some disappointment from the budget in terms of the allocation towards preventing violence against women, etc. Are there any other of those kind of policy interventions that any of your organizations is looking for from the government of either central or state?
In terms of response to violence, supporting
No, not just
survivors?
response to violence, but generally in the work that you do, what are you seeing as perhaps things that could enable more if there had been a policy or a budget or something in that space?
Right. So would anyone else like to answer? Otherwise.
Sure. Thank you so much, Pallavi.
I mean, if anyone else would like to answer any of Shariful or Madhu, but one thing I do want to say is I think a lot of the response of the government on COVID was through helplines, and the NCW started its helpline, but we didn't do there wasn't a monitoring of how it worked and during COVID, and that was I think the monitoring and evaluation is something that needs more strengthening. But if anyone else would like to add to that.
So that it's not just reactive, but also you're planning.
Yeah.
Yeah, just regarding this all discussion, I want to add just small 3 points. There's one is that during COVID, we have seen one very good practice, that the alternative income, even if it is the smallest one, we saw that's a large numbers of women, they saved a small money, probably from husbands or from others. So the small amount of money really was very crucial on that. And what we found that the alternative source of income, that even if you're a rich man, you can face in trouble. But if you have alternative income, we have saw that many women whose husbands are in abroad, so they saved money. Even they had some plantation or vegetables, even chickens and ducks in his home. So this alternative income saved a large numbers of people. That is one finding. Another is the digital transfer. We saw that the what we do that during COVID we cannot move. So we try to bring everyone through their Bcash, that the phone numbers is as a money transfer. That's really worked a lot. And another of my findings is that for during COVID, a large numbers of education institutes are closed. So what's my fear is that the next couple of years, a large numbers of girls, as they are out of education, so it can really create another problem. And during the questions of budget, so to fighting against the gender-based violence or others, I don't see the budgets is the problems, that the problem is the mentality. Still, all of these southern countries, the male dominant peoples, even if he's a secretary or other persons who are the influential, if it's the males or others, even the women, for their jobs or others, the belief or they say against gender-based violence, but many of them really believe that the women shouldn't get empowered, they should be tortured. So even many women, they believe that their husband tortures, it has a validity. So in this context, it's really tough to change the situation in whole South Asian countries. So what I believe that the economic empowerment and at the same time to give them understanding that why they are alone, they can fight if they need. I think these types of strength, I think really can help. You can spend billions of money, but if the mentality doesn't change, it's really tough to see the changes. So thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. I think we'll take one or two more questions and then maybe we can close with the movie because we're also running out of time. So I see that Naveen and Shoma have their hands up. Would either of you like to unmute yourself and ask?
Yes,
Should I
ma'am.
go first?
Maybe
Mine
we can take
was
both
Ma'am,
questions.
I have reviews about women empowerment. I have studied one reviews about women empowerment in the sense of political participation of women. That is from Punjab. Reviewed study taken by Ramesh K. Chandra. Women are still facing so many problems in the sense of all the answer is given by uh, his, uh, his husband. Uh, then how can you say that that is empowerment? Woman is empowered.
Maybe Shoma, we can take your question as well.
Thank you. I actually wanted to respond to the question you had raised about what is it that helps the groups to sustain and to be able to, respond to the kind of issues that are coming up from the grassroots. As the representative from BARC very rightly said, it is really about the intelligence of the state agencies and how we negotiate, or rather the women's federations themselves have negotiated. We are seeing this in Rajasthan currently through the Prashasan Gaon Ke Sang campaign, and my study in the Kerala Kudumbashri also showed that budget is really not the only, it is necessary but not sufficient condition, and that it really needs repeated opportunities for women to consolidate their strength on issues beyond the economic, to build their institutions for the support and ecosystem to change. And that seeing men, as you mentioned, in institutional spaces where women can negotiate and sit across the table as empowered individuals and collectives to negotiate with the local agencies as well as with state agencies. I think that makes a lot of difference in terms of how they are able to represent their issues, and there is no shortcut in this. So both these examples are telling us that a sustained effort, investment in women's capacities on a regular basis, intergenerationally, that is the other issue coming up now. The leadership for women to be transformed intergenerationally so that the institution processes and capacities are sustained. I think these are hats off to the experiences that have been shared here. And these are just some of the learnings I wanted to add from my own experience and research. Thank you.
Thank you. That's actually very optimistic because that gives a lot of encouragement. We have just 1 minute, and I was thinking that we can just take any one comment or question, and then when we close, maybe we can show the video that people that Pallavi had wanted to see. Sorry, Pallavi had wanted to show. Okay. So if there's no other further question, thank you so much. I think it's a very important issue, and it's very complex as well. And we know that we don't know how the COVID-19 pandemic will play out in the future, but we do know that economic stagnation was happening even before the pandemic. So the thrust on creating more jobs and poverty alleviation was the primary focus, and the role of NGOs seems to be quite important in adding more dimensions and having a more structured approach towards women's addressing violence against women. Before we close, can I request Damayanti to say a few words if you would like to?
I would really like to thank all the panelists and all the participants who have given such wonderful insights into in this very, very complex issue. And I think all of us, from our experiences, what Shoma said, I cannot agree more that the institutional processes need to be strengthened. And I think even within our organizations, this is a big challenge. It's not easy because to have a sustained focus on the processes, on organizing in the face of a lot of questioning is something which is happening all the time. But to be able to sustain it through years of mobilization, I think that is something very, very crucial. And one needs to, I mean, we've seen from the examples of Uttan, and we've seen from Pradhan, I mean, how many years, of course, also Brak, how many years it takes to come to this this stage where you're able to bring in all the issues connected with women's empowerment. And of course, economic empowerment is not just one aspect of it. And this is something which, like we say, for the organization, I mean, from the communities, this has to be sustained, but within organizations, this has to be also sustained, because there's a lot of, I must admit that there is a lot of kind of energies which are required, and at times you have to keep on working towards it because there is resistance. It's not that there isn't resistance. So these kind of discussions are important. These kinds of highlighting is important. And I think most importantly, the documentation is equally important in this respect. So I would just like to say that. And thank you very much, all of you, for sharing your thoughts and bringing it onto this platform. Gayatri, over to you.
So much. Thank you so much. And Pallavi, would you like to show the video, and those who would like to see it can stay on and see it, and to those who have to go for dinner, or thank you and good night. Thank you for joining us.
Sure, sure. So just a minute.
It's not, the sound isn't there.
Sorry, is it audible?
No, it's visible but not audible.
Oh, just a minute, sorry.
You may need to share sound also.
Aisha, do you know how to share sound?
The share screen is already enabled, so it shouldn't be a problem.
Yeah, maybe I'll share the presentation with with you all, and we can. I don't know what technological issue is there in this now.
I think there may be technical issues.
Ma'am,
Okay.
share the link in the chat box. I think then all of us.
Yeah,
can,
I'll do that.
and
Yes.
Email the
That-
link to everyone.
Sure, sure, sure.
And maybe Aisha, we can just share the link to everyone who had.
Yeah, actually, I'll share the YouTube link because we don't have a separate link. I'll mail it to you maybe.
I'll
And
email
then
everyone. Sure.
Sure.
okay.
Thank you,
Thank you.
everyone.
Thank you, everyone. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
So much
you.
for the organizer and the
Thanks to all the presenters. It was a very interesting, insightful presentation.
thank you so much.